Today we're going to talk about electronic meetings, right? We've spent the last couple of years during the COVID pandemic figuring out how we can fill our meeting requirements. So we've taken to platforms like Zoom or Skype or Google Meets or Teams. All great platforms. But what are the requirements and can we actually have those meetings? The good news is about board meetings is that yes, board meetings can be held electronically. There's actually a state statute, 317A, which is the Nonprofit Corporate Act, that does give board of directors of nonprofit corporations, such as association, does give them the ability and empowers them to hold their board meetings electronically. So that's the good news. Take a look though at your governing documents. It may or may not give specific instructions about how electronic meetings of the board can be held. So take a look at that. But again, the good news is that you can do it. Where it becomes trickier though is with the member meetings, which would be your annual meeting and also your special meeting, where all of the members of your association are to come together. Now, most associations went ahead and did an annual meeting during the pandemic, and some have just taken that as a tradition that they're going to have going forward. But be careful with this though, because it's tricky. By state statute, both under MCIOA 515B, the Minnesota Common Interest Ownership Act, and under most governing documents, it implies that a member meeting, an annual meeting, is in person. Because what does it say? It usually says, well, it will be held at a date and a place and a time dictated by the board of directors. So when it says place, that assumes a physical location. So a lot of annual meetings were held perhaps incorrectly because there's no guidance from state statute and most documents don't give guidance on how a membership meeting may be held electronically. So that's a good excuse to look at your documents and maybe update them and bring them up to current needs of today. Where you get hung up in a member meeting is when it comes to the voting. So voting gets tricky because you have to allow votes or nominations rather from the floor at a meeting, right? So the tricky thing is going into a virtual meeting, if there are any nominees from the floor, how do you vote? What's the vehicle of the ballot? So one way you can navigate this, again, check your documents, but one way you can navigate this is to do a ballot after the meeting. If your documents allow a vote by mail, then you can follow the protocol that it lays out, and it usually is pretty specific on a vote by mail process. But go into the annual meeting, have the annual meeting virtually so that you can check the box that you had your membership meeting annually like you're supposed to have, but the voting happens right afterwards. So the next day, the manager can mail out a ballot saying, here was the slate of nominees because there was one from the floor. Please return your ballot by the end of the month. And then you've fulfilled your duty to have the meeting and you fulfilled your process for the ballot. So again, check your governing documents on that. And if you're unsure, please do consult your association's attorney to make sure you're doing it correctly. But again, the good news is board meetings can happen electronically. The tricky news is annual meetings and membership meetings become a little more difficult to navigate. So hopefully you found this video helpful. Lots of other great videos at sharpermanagement.com. Thanks for watching.